Tonight, I want to share with you, board members, the work of our COVID-19 Advisory Task Force. This has been a tremendous undertaking by almost 40 people represented of different aspects of our school district. And we considered, first we considered what we value, because we want to make sure that what we value is at the forefront of all of our work. And number one, as I believe President Yen mentioned earlier in our meeting, number one is ensuring the health and safety of our team members and our students. And we have to remember that our team members are the ones who make the engine go. And they're the ones who shape the learning opportunities for our students. And if they are not healthy, we don't have a system for our students. So that's why we have to make sure that we are protecting their health and considering very deeply how we move forward in providing in-person learning opportunities for 2021. We are discovering, either by experiencing it ourselves or reading it or hearing from a friend or hearing from our students or parents, that social and emotional learning and wellness is even more critical now than it was before COVID-19. We also know, as I think Vice President mentioned earlier, that parents are essential in making learning, especially distance learning, work. Our parents are the bridge between the teacher and the students. And it is very important to us that we ensure that our parents are provided with the support and learning that they need so that we can continue in working together in partnership. And if anyone ever wondered what true authentic engagement is, this is it. And again, another one of those opportunities in COVID-19. It is also essential that we make sure that equitable access is there. And on May 19th, when we did our COVID-19 board meeting, you heard from Director Chen Song how we work together with team members to ensure that students had digital devices. Over 3,000 passed out in 4 days. And our team members going to extreme measures, including going up in the hills and figuring out how to bring Wi-Fi to all of our families. And finally, we are all learning what the true meaning of flexibility and pivot is. If we aren't able to pivot based on new information that comes to us tomorrow, we falter. And in our vision of MUSD, it states that we are trailblazers and innovators. And you can't be a trailblazer or an innovator if you aren't willing to take the new information that comes your way and figure out how to make it something that works for you. And that's certainly what we've done. This is our reality. We know that when we come back to learning in person, that we have to continue to mitigate and minimize the virus, and we have to follow what the directives are from the public health department as well as the state. We also know, as we heard at the beginning of this meeting in the board study session, that money is not there, that our budget is a tremendous challenge, which again opens up other opportunities for us to figure out how to be creative in getting what we need done. However, it's not going to happen if we don't have every single person working. And when I say every person working together, I mean our team members, our associations, our parents, our community. We also know that in order to have connected learning, it's not just digital devices, it's not just Wi-Fi, it also has to be a concerted effort in taking MUSD Educate Everywhere to the next iteration, which involves identifying those power standards so that we can be effective in supporting our learners with a minimum amount of time. We also know that connection means engaging one another and engaging our parents and our students in different ways. We know, again, social emotional learning is key, and we know that we need to make sure there's equality in digital devices and Wi-Fi access. And I appreciate that our board leaders are looking into ways that we can provide Wi-Fi access to not just our students, but their parents who happen to be residents of Milpitas. And that's where our partnership with the city comes in. Our strategic goal number 1 is a culture of we. And earlier in our budget study session, Wendy finished with our last slide saying that we need to leverage our community. And leveraging our community is certainly what we're doing. Beginning in May, we began with surveys to get voice from our parents, our students, and our teachers. And also we held many weekly sessions with different groups of parents to get their input about how MUSD Educate Everywhere and distance learning was either a challenge for them or a struggle or a success. And we know that in this plan that there needs to be many voices, so I will talk later about subcommittees. And I want to mention right now that we sent out surveys 3 different ways. We initially did some surveys from the district asking parents to share their experiences and students to share their experiences. We learned from that survey that where parents like to receive most of their information is directly from the teachers. So in our next survey asking about the needs of our parents and also their inclination towards 100% MUSD Educate Everywhere distance learning for 2021, we asked our teachers to reach out directly. And from those surveys, we had almost 2,200 parent surveys returned and almost 1,700 student surveys, as well as student conversations that teachers had with them. And from those results, we had a yield of almost 50-50 for distance learning for the full 2021. Then that's not good enough. We still need to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity who wants to give input. So on June 2nd, we launched our survey to parents and community members. And so far to date, we have 981 survey responses. 29% of those people are from middle schools, 70% from elementary schools, 1% from the high school, and 98% of them are parents, with the other being community members. And of those groups, we have 51% who prefer in-person with safety precautions, and 48% who would prefer a full distance learning for 2021. So the essentials of our plan will include these areas: health and wellness, operations and protocols, and teaching and learning, which match and bear our values that we mentioned. Here you see screenshots of our COVID-19 Advisory Task Force. And we met, I think it was 5 times. Before we expanded and became the COVID-19 Advisory Task Force, we were the association's roundtable leadership group. So we actually began meeting weekly with that group around the end of February, and then spent a day together on March 13th. And this is really our plan. It's not my plan, because if it's just my plan, as I mentioned in the Sunny Hills Association meeting on Saturday, it's not going to be the best plan. So when we have many people at the table with many ideas, we get the best plans. So I'm going to ask them to share the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. First, we'll have Lisa Masood.
Hi, thank you. So our task force has been working on a design to make sure that the elementary students are slowly integrated back into school. And what you see here is a screenshot of how we've kind of combined 2 phases. So we would group half of the students in an elementary school, and then the other half. So for phase one, we would have only 6 students in each of the classrooms. So if you had like a group of 24 students, you would have 6 students on one day. Then the next day you would have the next 6 students. Then on Wednesday, you would have group B, which consists of those 12 students. So you'd have the next 6 students on Wednesday and then the other 6 students on Thursday. That way we can implement a sort of new routine, and our students and our families maintain a friendship and a relationship with their teacher, because we're going to get new students next year and we don't have the relationship that we built this year. So we want to make sure that we maintain a social and emotional routine, and make sure that we're checking in on them in more ways than just physically, and we're making sure they're healthy, obviously. So the second phase would be to implement just a group A and a group B. So we would have 12 students on Monday and Tuesday, back to back, in the classroom each day. And then group B would come on Wednesday and Thursday, and we would have 12 students in the classroom for those consecutive days. One thing to note is that when group A is at school, group B is going to be independent at home. So they're going to be working on either a packet or they're going to be working on an online instruction based on what the teacher has designated. So this could be a site-to-site schedule. Then, so when they also take home lunch, so that there's no risk of any like bacteria swapping or germs. And then at home, they are, we were given an option to each site to do differentiated instruction. They could do an ELD sort of time, and then, or they could do some kind of online differentiation. Fridays would be meant for small group intervention, or it's obviously up to the site and what the students need at that particular school. We would also give time for staff to have collaboration and planning, because we're going to have to do a lot. We're going to have to be inside the classroom and then obviously online in our Zoom platforms or in our Google Meets. Could you go to the next slide, Ms. Jordan? Thank you. So I want to reiterate that the team emphasized that they want to phase it in, because we want to make sure that we have great student and family relationships. We want to set up a social emotional routine and strategy so that we encourage students to feel comfortable at school, even though they might not feel it right away. We know that teachers have been emphasizing the fact that they need time to plan and they need time to collaborate so that they can both fit the needs of the students inside the classroom and then online as well. And that's going to be a tough to balance. So we also want to value, and we value our time with our students. We want to make sure that we target our instruction, and that's in class and then obviously in our online platform using Zoom or in Google Meets. And we want to make sure that we provide the equity that each student at our school needs. And then we create independent engagement schedules. So I really like that phrase, independent engagement schedules. It means that the students aren't just, zoned out at home on iReady or on Freckle or any kind of platform. They're engaged in the material that the teacher has provided so that they continue their independent studies.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there anybody else from the elementary team who wants to add anything?
Great job, Lisa. You did wonderful to explain our process.
Yes, I want to also say great job to Lisa. Also, I did want to point out that one of the other discussions that we've had is looking at how we can do face-to-face time, looking at how we utilize our science teachers and our PE coaches for the for students who are online, so that they can get some face-to-face time even when they're at home.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to our middle school.
Before we do that, Cheryl, can I ask a question here to Ms. Massoud? Regarding the afternoon instruction, I know that you mentioned that it'll be up to the teacher to prioritize whether or not they do group or individual targeted ELD, but in essence, with the two subgroups, are they going to ever coordinate and get together on an online class between the subgroups of A1, A2, and B1 and B2?
You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. One thing that we were discussing is that it's going to be based on sites. So we all do our different instruction differently. And I found that out the hard way when I was like, oh, we just do this, we just do that. And they're like, Lisa, that's not how we do it at Spangler, or that's not how we do it at Thinker. So it's all site-based. But during that time, I think it would be a really cool way to make sure that all of our students are met their own specific needs. So we would then, because we're not able to switch our groups in the classroom because of physical demands and our distancing needs, we can utilize the computer to then switch our groups. So if I was teaching second grade, I could be able to take all the students who need a specific standard from all of the second grade in my site. And that's how we're going to differentiate in that afternoon time on our online platform. Did that make sense to you?
Let me
Can I
expand.
add something, Min?
Yeah,
Min,
go
it's
ahead.
Diana.
Yeah.
So we, obviously this is a work in progress, and Lisa has done an amazing job with everything. She's a leader among leaders. I'm so proud of her. But I think it depends. Like in my vision for my class, I would want us all at least 1 or 2 or 3 times a week to meet as a whole group so that the kids can interact as a whole class. So I think it just depends on the site, the teacher, and the needs of our students. So while Lisa has been a proponent of making sure that we meet the needs of our ELs and that our special needs students and everything, we also talked about meeting the needs of the class as a whole, so that hopefully at some point when we come back into school, it's still my hope as a teacher, that we will come back as an entire class and be in a classroom together, that they have experiences together. So I think, Min, it's going to be a multitude of things, but it's also meeting the needs of each class, each teacher's individuality, which Milpitas is always known for. So, Nancy, if you have anything
Yeah, I was actually going to kind of jump on that as well. In my vision and kind of what I've talked to a number of our other teachers is, we'll have instructional blocks every afternoon that'll be online instruction. Whether it's Friday in that graphic or Wednesday, there's been discussion for what the day is that's a planning and differentiated. In that time, sometimes you would have whole class group meetings. Sometimes you would have small groups for one thing. Sometimes you would have small groups for another thing. So I think that's going to be a schedule. Every classroom at back to school night every year, the teacher unveils, this is our class's schedule for the week. And I would envision that type of thing still happening. And it would look a little differently in every classroom because of how the makeup of the class is, what the needs are. But I would definitely see sometimes you would have a whole class meeting, sometimes you would meet with a small group, and those groups would be flexible. It also helps with families. One of the feedbacks we've gotten from our families online is like, if everybody in the house has a 9:30 Zoom meeting or Google Meet meeting, it was a problem for the parents to manage 4 children at home. We're all on Google Meet. So having those staggered by teacher, it helps the parent also to manage the kids at home.
Great. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Nancy, for the incredible insight on that. And thank you, Lisa, for the incredible work on putting this, initial plan together. It's amazing to see the progress that we're at right now.
Lisa is an up and coming leader in this district. Woohoo!
I wanted to add, this is Lori Armino from Senate. Just one of the other things, and I think Cheryl will talk about this later too, is all of the subcommittees that are going to be put into place. And I think that's going to help to sort of flesh out some of these things. I think we'll all have a variety of things happening on different sites, but I also think there's going to be collaboration across sites at these subcommittees to figure out, you know, because Pomeroy may come up with one thing that I'd never even thought of for Senate, but being able to be on subcommittees with people across the district is going to give us, you know, some of those more ideas and maybe even some consistency around plans, which I think is going to be great.
Thanks, Lori.
Okay, Clarissa Isbell is sharing our middle school plan.
Hold on one second. Did I just hear Senate and Pomeroy and Rose all in a discussion around collaboration?
Yes, you did. And there are
Nice.
other members of that elementary collaboration team who aren't here tonight, but it was a larger group than them.
Powerful.
Yep.
Thank you.
And it's actually not Clarissa, it's Stephanie Woodhams who's going to be presenting for middle school.
Stephanie.
Yes, it's okay. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share our work. We, like the elementary, originally came up with a plan where we were trying to see how we could have like an A group and a B group of students come onto campus, have it Monday be like Monday be first, second, third period. We wanted students to be able to have the personal experience with us, but the logistics of that really kept us feeling like we were just continually saying, no, this can't work, this can't work. Part of the issue we found was we want the students to be in same groups, and with our teaming, we can somewhat do that, but we also have students who move different places for electives, depending on their language needs, depending on if they're a part of the special education program. We didn't want students just to be in one classroom, because then how will they do their science work? We talked about like teachers moving and students staying in the area. It would necessitate like sanitizing that we just didn't feel we could do in a quick turnover to allow that number of students on campus. We looked at the feasibility of maintaining social distancing of students during the passing periods. Yes, we can put the lovely arrows on the ground, but we all have been to Safeway when people don't necessarily follow those guidelines. So middle schoolers, we just anticipated a lot of issues with that. So the plan that we've come up with begins with all students distance learning, but this allows for us to really give a lot of flexibility and be able to adapt. So students, so I'll speak to the schedule first. So you can see Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, all students are involved in distance learning. We have an advisory set up at 9 in the morning to 9:15, where teachers would meet with their homerooms. This could be any number of different things could take place at this time. I in my head was like, did everybody check their email? Because middle schoolers aren't always very good about that type of thing. First period, we've given an hour and 10 minutes. This doesn't mean a student would be on a Zoom meeting for that amount of time. This just is a scheduled time for us to meet with our students, because this is not something that we were doing from our March to June 4th time period at home with flexible distance learning. And it was a lot of trying to schedule around other people's meetings. And so that really didn't work out as well. We do want to make sure that we are seeing our students each day and interacting in that way. You can see second period, again, is another hour and 10 minutes. There's a little bit of a break time that's available, because again, teachers don't have to engage the students. There can be independent work that can happen. We can also break out into small groups to do different activities, but it allows for that flexibility. There is a lunchtime, which as a teacher who was flexible distance learning, there was sometimes that I was eating at maybe 4 o'clock because there wasn't enough time to be able to eat while you're trying to work with students. Then there's a third period. There is a teacher prep time because then on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, there could be the option to bring students to campus to work in small groups. We've also discussed how there could be students who were brought to campus who maybe didn't have reliable Wi-Fi or who needed a schedule where parents were like, this just can't happen. So this type of schedule allows for that flexibility to bring people to campus in a socially distant, safe way that is much more manageable than trying to separate 7th grade, 8th grade, all these different kind of permutations that we were trying to come up with. The small groups can be in person. The small groups can also be online. So like I said, it just offers us a lot of flexibility. And then you can see that Wednesday schedule is set aside for our regular meetings, as well as more targeted group time for our students who are at Promise or who have other needs that need to be addressed. And then on the second slide, so one of the keys that we really feel is necessary is attendance. We were taking attendance 1 time a week based on if a student interacted with us just once during the week. And middle schoolers are super smart, and we need that attendance every single day for the class periods that we meet, because that's how we can see the engagement. That's going to better able us to interact with those students. Hey, I didn't see you in first period. What was happening? Is there anything I can do to help? We can meet the needs in that way much better. Prior to this plan, trying to teach all, like I have 165 students, and the 20 some that didn't interact with me by a certain point, like Tuesday or Wednesday, and I would start to then make phone calls. That was a lot to maintain. And I think if students and parents were aware of how much engagement was actually happening in a more real-time way daily, we would get a lot more interaction. We also found grades are super important, obviously, but we really want to make sure that it's not a credit, no credit situation, that students are earning actual grades for this. And then as has been mentioned earlier tonight, we really do want to ensure parent participation and support. So in the May 19th meeting, I believe it was, Parwinder spoke about how we really need to kind of train parents on what our expectations are. And so our hope is before students join us for the 2021 school year, we can actually provide some sort of workshop to reach all parents to really explain this plan to them and the expectations that we'd have of their students and what kind of role that they could have with it. We feel this plan provides social distancing where we can have the smaller groups on campus, and it's more feasible with the cleaning. The sanitation of contact areas is much more doable. It was so great to be in the task force and have MOT a part of it, and Edgar telling us, yeah, classrooms, it takes 5.5 minutes to sanitize, and then with that there needs to be drying time with it. And so knowing that students would be moving from different locations, it was just mind-boggling to think of how are we going to do that. We provide support then for our vulnerable and at promise students. It's adaptable to changing conditions. If the county says we can have more students, then this is one where we can expand rather than have to contract. So we feel like starting at this space and then breaking out and making it more available depending on the needs of the county and the hopefully opening that we will eventually see. We felt that this was much more adaptable for that. It has a schedule and the protocol for that regular student contact. So you're not just having a Zoom meeting maybe once a week or just office hours. This is where you're going to have face-to-face time with your students. And this also looks out for the needs of our staff and our students, both with the health and like different things like childcare support.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anybody else from the middle school group or questions from the board?
Sure. I'm not sure if the question is appropriate now or at the end, because we have elementary school students and there is a need for elementary school students in a lot of areas, the schools also provide childcare. Middle school does that somewhat as well, and high school, not as much. So at some point, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get it addressed here, but the concern about, based on the schedule, the how we're going to inform parents of what this process is going to be, how can they be trained, and they can make the proper adjustments or schedules accordingly to the best of their ability.
Okay.
And so part of our concern was we definitely have students who may not have been as engaged with us because they were somewhat like childcare providers for their siblings. We were hoping in that kind of situation that we would be able to bring them to campus. Again, it isn't like a super plan that we have of that.
I'm not, you know, Stephanie, I'm not asking for a super, I just want to make sure that it's out there.
But yes, we're definitely wanting to meet the needs of our students who don't have a space that allows them to really focus and be engaged. But also we know on the flip side of that, parents who now will have possible elementary students, staff members who have elementary students, we're trying to see, we feel like this scenario is one that allows for a lot of adaptation and hopefully meeting the needs of as many people as possible.
I fully agree with that. And I think I'd like to ask the superintendent, the registration process of coming back to school, and is there consideration of the registration process, or all the parents that we know that are returning getting engaged earlier in terms of having an understanding of what's going to happen, the parent university, and as Stephanie had mentioned, our expectations, because again, it is about continuous learning and equity, but also accountability, you know, and academic success to the best of our abilities, and we know how much we're going to have to partner. So it's part of the task force process, the registration and the parent engagement piece as far as a continuum.
Yep. I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I wrote down what you said. Is there, do we have other members of the middle school concept who would like to add or respond to Vice President Norwood?
This is Clarissa. I think one of the things that we're really trying to focus on to start school is to have a process by which things are really clear about, for parents, for students, and for teachers, so that we can all adjust with this new style of learning. And I think that's one of the major reasons we really want to have a parent university and have something ready for them before school starts. And I think that will alleviate a lot of the issues with engagement that we found this year.
And Principal McMurray?
Yes, so yeah, thank you. I think Stephanie and Clarissa kind of captured most of the plan that we've been collaborating on. But one of the things we definitely are looking into is how we are adapting our registration process, working with Life Touch, the new norms of how to have students and possibly parents come on campus for that process at the beginning of the school year, what that will look like, the expanded time, the more deliberate way that we control the flow of people into the gym for that to happen in a very safe and health conscious way. We're also looking at working with PK, and they have made a very interesting pivot in their approach to parent engagement and parent education, in that they are focusing now on how to support parents as their kids are in a remote learning experience. So they're going to help parents understand how Zoom works, or how Google Meet works, or how to verify, what their child is doing when they're sitting behind the screen. So they are adapting the way they reach out to and support parents in a way that fits very well with what our plan is doing. So and I've met with the PK lady already. We've kind of discussed how that will work in the fall, as well as some other parent opportunities. And like Stephanie mentioned, meeting with the parents right up front before the school year starts is key, so that they really are the first to know how this plan is going to work and how we will collaborate with them on behalf of their children, so that they could have that positive experience in an online learning environment.
Thank you, Casey.
Cheryl, can I say something? I know it's like past elementary, but
No, go ahead.
oh well. So I know when we talked in our group as elementary people, we did talk a lot about, like, our phase in was more about the parent support than anything else. Like, we wanted to make sure that when we bring them in small groups, like Lisa mentioned, is that we want to get their support and their backing by making that connection in a small group. And I know I don't have my video on. Okay, so I don't want to show the gray hair. But it was important to us as elementary that when we bring in those small groups, that the parents are with us, because we want to make sure we teach them, or they teach us, for us oldies, on whatever platform we're going to use. Because as we found out, or at least I found this last 2.5 months of doing this virtual stuff, is that some parents are more capable on the internet, more teachers are more capable or less capable. That we wanted to make sure that we made the bond with the families, because that's the most important thing that I think that will allow us to be successful with this. We need to make sure that they know what we're using, what we're doing, that we're connecting with them, that we have their support. So and I think that goes TK to 12 to adult ed. Well, adult ed is adults, but as far as TK 12, we need our parents to back us. We need them to feel comfortable with whatever platform we are using. And I think in every plan, whether it was stated or not, that has always been a component to making sure that this is successful.
If I may, I want to commend and applaud our leader of teachers for being, she said it, she said, we want to partner with our parents. We want for them to teach us, for us to teach them. And it has been a core component, and that's part of the partnering. And so that's what I think is going to make this plan a success, because of the vulnerability that we are learning together, and our parents are also experiencing the same thing. And so they're developing a lot of empathy for what our teachers are going through as they are in their homes, taking care of their kids and teaching at the same time. And so thank you, Diana, for really clarifying that. And we need to understand that learning is a social construct. And we cannot learn if we have not developed that connection, the relationship. That's critical. I will learn from someone that I know and that I can connect with, and the trust. And so I thank you for that.
Thank you, Norma. You're always nice to me. I think the relationship thing is the most important thing that we can do until we can go back to the classroom 100%, where we have the everyday connection at the door, at the elementary level. I know middle school and high school is very different, but it's that connection. And for me as a teacher of 33 years, my families are like the most important thing. It's like it can make or break a year. If you don't connect with them, you're going to have not such a great teaching year. So I think with virtual learning, if that's how we're going to start the year, bringing them in small groups where we're safe and the kids are safe and the parents are safe is 100% what we need to do. And personally, not MTA, not anything, second grade teacher, Diana Orlando, that's what we need to do. We need to make those connections. We need to build the relationships, because that's what's going to carry us forward. And that's what's always been so special about MUSD.
Yep. And I'm going to segue into high school with Principal Rojas.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Francis Rojas here, Principal of Milpitas High School. First of all, I'd like to thank our subcommittee for the task force for the high school. We had representatives not only from the teaching and classified staff at Milpitas High, but also input from adult ed as well as from Cal Hills, together with classified from the district. Oh, no, both classified and management from the district as well as MOT in our committee. And very similar to all of the other levels, what we had just discussed is very key, is about the preparation going into this new model. We had also discussed possibly looking at extending some professional development days at the beginning to make sure we front load first all of our teachers and staff with the expectations of the new model going into the fall, so we can be strongly prepared to support parents, because as the previous group had mentioned, one thing jumping into this round of shelter in place, the first initial round of shelter in place, was that many of our parents commented if we knew a little more about what we were expecting, again, we were building a plane as we were flying it, they could have supported their students better. So that is very critical. And, our teachers are all contracted to come to work, start work again after the summer, only 3 days before the first student day. If we feel that we can put all that front loading in that time, great. But if we do need more time, then we'll have to consider moving some days to the front to make sure we're prepared. And so to preface the high school conversation, being the largest high school in our county with 3,200 students, we start our conversation off with, okay, our rooms are set. We don't have any more classrooms. We can't hire more teachers. We can't make the size of the classrooms larger. We can't add more days, so on and so forth. We can't really add more hours to the day. So we had to figure out, how do we make a hybrid model feasible? And with 3,200 students, a hybrid model standing alone would be very difficult to do. And having to split, you would essentially have to split the school into thirds in order to have a safe size of student population in a classroom. And splitting into thirds would lead to very minimal in-person interaction at school. So therefore, if you take a look at this slide, currently all of our teachers, prior to COVID-19, all of our teachers were doing in-person learning. Currently, during COVID-19, all of our teachers are doing distance learning. Going into fall, we are proposing that we go into what we are calling a parallel school model, meaning in order to make the hybrid learning work for our students, and to ensure that we have safe sizes in classrooms, we would have to create a virtual, 100% virtual academy of some sort, where we would shave off a third of our school population to participate in 100% virtual learning. So that is shown there in that blue bar. We are currently looking at some curriculum packages. The most promising at this point looks like UC Scout, which is developed by the University of California system. It includes all of our A through G courses, as well as AP courses, like pretty much everything that we teach at high school, and also provides a common, as the other groups have said, the importance of a common platform. And in that virtual platform, UC Scout, it would be Canvas. So I think in both of these models, in this parallel model, the hybrid and the virtual, it's very important that we emphasize a common learning management system or platform, so that both students, parents, and teachers, it's all in one place, and people aren't going to different places or having to go sift through emails to understand what's going on that week. So that's part of some of the work that we'll need to be doing over the summer to determine what is feasible based off of our budget, as well as based off of the needs of our students and our teachers. So August and September, we would continue with distance learning. That would provide us some time and flexibility to acclimate into this parallel schools model. We have also discussed the possibility of what happens if students need to move from one model to the other, that we have to create some ground rules around that. Because again, the purpose of the hybrid model is to maintain a safe and healthy learning environment in classrooms. Once we go into October, November, December, then we go into the true hybrid model, where our 2/3 of our school, so again, 1/3 is in that blue virtual model at virtual school, and the other 2/3, so that's about 2,200 students, would be split up into group A and group B. So this is, I think, similar to what elementary and middle has proposed. Group A would go to school on Monday and Tuesday, periods 1 through 5 on Monday, periods 2, 4, 6 on Tuesday. The reason why we've done odds and evens on each day is some of our classes that require 2-period blocks, or two periods that are core together. This would allow the students to see, instead of being in one class for almost 4 hours a day, they would be able to see their teacher twice a week. That same model would then be for group B on Thursday and Friday, with Wednesday being a support day, office hours, additional tutoring for our students that need extra support, collaboration and preparation. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. So the next slide shows something similar, but more from a student perspective. So here you can see what I mean by about 1,000 students go virtual. That leaves 2,200 for the distance learning in August and September, and then the hybrid model in October, November, December. So this is just another way to look at it, more from a student grouping perspective. Again, group A goes to school physically on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday through Friday, they are at home. And then group B is at school Thursday and Friday. Monday through Wednesday, they are home. And our next slide. So what does the day look like when we get to October, November, December? We are going to shift for this parallel schools hybrid model into block periods. And they are 90-minute instructional periods with additional 15 minutes in each period to do health and safety work. Because of the size of our school and the age level of our students, we really believe that our students can take some of the responsibility to make sure that their classrooms are safe and healthy and ready for the next class that comes in. So school would start at 8:30, depending on Monday or Tuesday, Thursday or Friday. The first period in the morning would be 8:30 to 10:15. That first 15 minutes would be our COVID-19 process of possibly needing to take temperatures of every student. So that would happen in each classroom, possibly before they even enter the classroom, but we're allotting time for that. And then that is followed up with 90 minutes of instruction. And then we would do a 20-minute break. And then at 10:35 to 12:20, that would be the second period of the day. So that would be periods 3 or 4, with 15 minutes dedicated to wiping down high contact areas, and then 90 minutes of instruction. I believe we discussed that they would actually do the wipe down at the end after they've touched everything in preparation for the next class. and then a 50-minute lunch, and then the last period of the day at 1:10 to 2:55. So that's periods 5 or 6 depending on the day. Again, with 15 minutes allotted for wipe down of contact, high contact areas. So we needed to provide flexibility for our teachers during this time. So we had a couple of ideas that we have listed here of how these periods could be used. So essentially, we're locking students into a schedule, and possibly what we could do is students that are at home could watch what you're doing in the classroom. So if group A on Monday is in period 1, group B could be asked to log on and join the class virtually from home. Watch the teacher, interact with questions. It's kind of via satellite, okay? And that type of schedule optimizes instructional time, like teacher face time, because that means that on Thursday and Friday, you don't have to repeat again. Everyone is together on those days. Another option is that the group at school have classes that can do some sort of activity in lab, while the group B at home would do other activities, watch the recorded lessons, or do independent work. Another suggestion that teachers can use is the students at home do something together with the students at school for 30 minutes. Then after that, they do a different activity, independent at home, and then with teacher support in class. So those are only a few of our possibilities. The key here is flexibility, because each of our content areas require different approaches to learning. So for example, some science, all science classes require a lab component. In order to optimize the teacher-facing time, there may be weeks where it's all labs that week, and that's what students are doing, and everything's independent. But perhaps the week before is where students are prepared for the lab and receive all of the direct instruction for that. So we're utilizing more face time for lecture and direct instruction. With all these considerations, we still have to think about our hands-on classes and classes that require physical presence and activity. For example, like our art classes, our visual arts classes, our performing arts classes, physical education, our foods class, and many of our academy classes as well. So we still have to take those things into consideration. Okay, that was a lot of information. High school gets a little complex, but we've tried to simplify it there with our parallel schools, hybrid, and virtual academy model.
And if I might cut in just really quickly, yeah, we wanted to really emphasize this might be departments getting together and planning, like, how does this best work in our department, which type of this model, but the schedule itself allows the flexibility to be able to do a lot of different type of things.
And Brett, do you have something to add?
No, we've gone on long enough.
And make sure you had the opportunity.
Thank you. No, all explained unless there are other questions.
Okay. We have questions for the high school model.
How many members were on the high school team or the discussion, and what were their roles? I mean, how many members were on the high school teams, and what were their positions, or who were they?
Okay, so on the high school team, I was there as the principal. Skylar Drager was on the team as our assistant principal that oversees counseling and master schedule. We had Brett Weber, who is on here with us. He represents, he's an MTA rep as well as an English and ELD teacher on campus. We also had Lita Meyer, who's with us here tonight as well, as a science teacher. And Lori Louie, representing our office staff. Cynthia Walker, representing our paraprofessionals. And then I believe from the district, we had Abner Ames, representing MOT. Who else?
We had Raquel Mendoza for Calaveras Falls, and they are looking at the same model with some adaptations because, of course, being smaller, they actually can have more flexibility than we can have. as well as Juliana Brahim from Adult Ed. And I feel like there was one or two more.
Okay.
Suzette. Was Suzette on our team? Ramajem?
Yes.
No? Yeah, Suzette was on our team from L&D, and Cheryl Jordan was on our team as well.
Chin Song also joined.
Oh, and Chin Song, yes.
Michelle Kessinger was also
Oh my
on
gosh.
our group.
Got a lot of power players in our group, yes.
Thank you.
I have a question, Francis.
Yes.
So since we are doing flexible learning, and you are splitting to group A and group B, if group A, let's say 100 of the group A students decided that they would like to just do online from now, is that okay? Or they have to, if they belong to group A, this is when they have to show up at school?
I think, so we had discussed that and we don't have those details yet. I think it's a lot easier to go from the hybrid to the virtual. It's a lot harder to go from the virtual to the hybrid because adding more students, like really this plan really is optimally going to work with about 1/3 of our students doing this virtual thing. If we start adding more into the hybrid, the capacities in the classrooms are going to end up being very unsafe. This is landing around between 12 to 15 students in a classroom. Remember, high school students are almost adult sized. And so spacing them out in that room is quite difficult. And many of our classrooms, and believe it or not, government issued or government sized portables are actually bigger than the 1969 classroom built at MHS. So our classrooms are slightly smaller than like a portable classroom. So we would have to figure out.
We could get away with more than 2/3 on site. The problem actually is less in the classroom. We could do 15 to 16 in a classroom with almost the entire amount of kids if we modify our schedule. And that means collapsing things that don't fill. And then, so it means taking away choice from our students.
Right.
But the problem becomes at lunch, at break, in the hallways, in the restrooms, when you have 3,200 kids out at one time, or half of 3,200, which is, 1,600, that's too many. And so that's where when you get, if you get 1,000 of those off campus, then you're dealing with a number that's not unsafe outdoors.
Yeah, and one thing we also want to consider and why we're doing this parallel model is there are groups of students that require more, like they really need to be on campus. We have to make the space on campus for our CBI program. That will not be successful with going to school only 50% of the time. We're dealing with that already right now where our students in our CBI special education program and families are struggling with the distance learning. So we're trying to find ways that our special education students, our beginner EL students have a little more ability to be on campus with the proper supports, and students that are that have more ability to be independent, and some being fully independent can go 100% virtual. Other things that we are, connected with what you were saying, Han, is we also know that there were some students who were not successful in distance learning during the shelter in place period. So this is not going to end up just being a choice that's made by a survey. Like, oh, if you answered, I'll do 100% virtual. If someone chooses 100% virtual, but you couldn't do it with our distance learning right now, we would probably have to have conversations with that family about what's best for student learning and success. Yes. So this is not a cut and dry process.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Francis, quick question. In regards to the size of the high school, I know that we have multiple buildings on the campus. With the block scheduling for the different groups, is there any thought about consolidating certain types of courses so that we limit the travel of the high school students, across campus, and again, limiting the exposure? I think Skylar mentioned it during the lunch times and break times.
Right. So because of each So the only way I can foresee that is if we core, you know, there are only like maybe 2 classes that every freshman have in common, and that would be biology and English. Math would be different, so they'd have to move, and then their electives in PE would require them to move. I think the grade level that probably has the most commonalities in their schedule would be grade 10 with English, 10th grade English. Most 10th graders take chemistry, and then all 10th graders take world history. So we could get smart by doing that, but that, you know, having been a master scheduler of a larger high school, it's you know, I could already see Skylar.
It's very difficult from a master schedule perspective, because the computer program that we're using either looks at balancing classes out, so making sure that every class is a similar size. But if you or you can cohort kids, but when you cohort kids, you throw off that balance. And because of the nature of we have hundreds of choices for them. And so it's not like they're choosing from 4 electives, they're choosing from 65 electives. And so the more that you cohort them, the less choice they have. And also more imbalances you're gonna have. I know this doesn't sound very articulate right now, but if we're worried about safety, that class size balance is more important than the distance they're traveling while they're outdoors from room to room.
Yeah, so I'd actually be more interested in looking at how are we able to enforce the social distancing in the classroom, provide the teachers and the students with the tools and the ability to keep the classroom as germ-free as possible.
Francis, I would also add, this is Lita, I would also add that with the chemistry specifically, we also at the chemistry level start introducing honors versus regular chemistry, and also a lot of our sophomores at this point are choosing to take forensics, choosing to take physics instead of chemistry. There's a lot of different choices that they start ending up with in science too.
So it is something we have talked about. It's still on the table. I wouldn't say it's off the table, but it is quite difficult. And but yeah, it's in consideration.
No, thank you. I appreciate the level of collaboration and discussion that's happening, you know, for our high school level. I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate too that that's one of the beauties of having a large high school is so much choice for our learners. And that's important, especially as we look at our strategic goal number 3 for developing purposeful pathways for students. I want to bring us now to all the details, because we've had several questions that really boil down to details, such as registration. How do we ensure that when students are traveling from one classroom to the other that there's social distancing? How do we ensure that there's social distancing in the classroom? How do we make sure that parents are onboarded? Those are the details that is the work of subcommittees. And we have 114 MUSD team members who have signed up to be on subcommittees to tackle all of those different details. And I have parents too that I need to invite to subcommittees as well as students to tackle some of those details around parent and student support and social emotional learning, extracurricular activities, sports, and music, and all of the other aspects that really provide a robust learning experience. Because as you think about learning, and as a board member has identified, it's not just the content, it's also the experience that helps to shape us as we're moving through school. So Francis had alluded to the beginning of this when we literally had just a backpack and each other to jump out of the plane and go. And we are in the midst of building out the plane. And so thus, this is the symbol for what the subcommittee work is. And here is our timeline. Our timeline, as I've shared with you from May to June, has been about getting input and concerns and what works, what doesn't from all stakeholders. And we're coming to the end of the first phase of May to June 9th by presenting to the board and the community what our scenarios are. The next phase is June through August, where the subcommittee works, and I've outlined for you the major buckets or the major umbrellas of subcommittee work. And in case you can't see it, I'll run through that quickly. It's the systems and operations, ensuring the safety, health, and wellness and nutrition, social, emotional support, getting down to the pieces about MUSD Educate Everywhere, where we are figuring out how to provide students with intervention in big ways that are more than just seat time, because there is evidence that simply seat time or longer work day or longer school days do not really push us further in our reading and writing if we're behind. And then there's the professional development and training for all involved, parents and team members. And of course, any language that comes out of it that needs to be mapped out in a memorandum of understanding with our associations. And then we're going to come back to you on June 23rd with more of that detail work from the subcommittee. And if there are any applicable board policies, we'll bring those to you as well. And I know Vice President had mentioned the idea of, for all of the PPE and other essentials that we're looking at, how do we keep those dollars here in Milpitas to feed our own community? So that's an example of something that might be in a board policy. And then through July and August, continue subcommittee work where it's needed. And I see that primarily in the nuts and bolts of the learning and the grading and assessment, and also any communication that needs to take place. And the direction that I want to go in is to phase things in so that the first month of school, we are all still distance learning. You heard Diana talk about the importance of onboarding with our families and helping them to understand what the teacher plans and how the teacher is going to connect, how the new schedules are working. It provides us with the opportunity to make sure that we have all of those one-way road signs developed throughout the campuses, that we have our plexiglass installed, that bottom line is it also provides, as we talked about with the board study session, and as President Lien said, it provides extended time to get through the virus and provide all of our staff members as well as parents and students with another month of getting out of the woods when it comes to the contagion of the virus.
Superintendent Jordan?
Yes.
I would feel a little better if you can go back to that past slide. I'd feel a little bit better if I saw in the subcommittee work something about the parent engagement piece or the registration piece.
Yeah, the registration piece is under systems and operations. And the parent engagement piece is also under support, social emotional support, as well as professional development and training. There's just not enough room on this slide to put all those details, but those are in the buckets of these big umbrellas.
So the folks that helped you put these slides together, they know that those things are underneath those particular areas, or if we asked on a separate, we could see those things identified.
Yep. Let me see if I can pull it up for you quickly.
You know, we've been working together too long. If you can actually pull this up right here, and that would. You're putting yourself on the spot.
Can you see my screen? Does it say subcommittees for COVID-19 task force? Or do
Yes.
I switch to?
You increase the font.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Still small.
I haven't, I'm still maneuvering.
I'm not the only one, Cheryl.
Okay, I'm blind. I can see it. Come on, people.
I see it. I see it.
No, you don't. That's not it. She just wrote that in real fast.
Oh, that was that was there.
I saw her type it.
Oh.
You're seeing things, Chris.
She probably did a find command.
Cheryl, there's a public comment for you. A question for you.
From Robert Jones.
No. Scott, would you?
Sorry.
Cool. What is it, Scott?
I think he's reading, but Scott, would you unmute yourself?
There you go.
No, we can't hear you yet.
Oh, wait, hold on. There we go.
I
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Charles Schlitzbaum again. And he said it's kind of a weird question, but are students going to need to take that hour-long pesticide course to help in cleaning handle cleansers?
I know what he's talking about. And we will have to figure that one out. I remember last week talking in one of my EOC meetings with the county that there are products that can be used that don't require that hour-long pesticide training.
I believe you can use Simple Green.
Yes.
Thank you, Skylar.
Any other public comments? Thank you, Charles.
No, that's it for right now.
Okay.
Scott.
Any other questions?
Was that like students are going to do the work, or I'm confused. Who's going to use the Simple Green?
It was talking about there are some of the guidelines from the state, as well as some of the practices in other parts of the country where they might have already, Oregon, I think. No, that's not Oregon. But at any rate, another state that's opened up, and then some of the other countries that have opened up, they have had implemented the practice of the kids wiping down their dust and their supplies before they leave.
Move on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not my association, but knowing like when we wanted to do certain grounds work and stuff as a school site, and that we weren't allowed to because it infringing upon CSEA work, is this the same?
I don't know.
Me neither.
So can I put can I say something?
Yes.
I don't know.
So that came out of the high school group because in order for us to maximize the time that students need to be on campus, we had to figure out how do we do a general disinfecting between periods and not require teachers to do it. We don't have enough custodians to go through our 150 classrooms and do it quickly. So we thought of, well, you know, at least when I went to elementary school, I had to wipe down the table I ate at for lunch, and you just wiped it down and you made sure it was clean, that we could have some sort of simple cleaning supplies, whether there's some, you know, organic, whatever wipes that they can just wipe their desk before they leave the classroom. And that's what we're talking about. It's not the deep cleaning that MOT does. It's not deep sanitizing. It's just cleaning up your space.
Thank you. And I'm sure that more of that will have to come out when we have our association's discussions. And as I said about the budget, I think that in order for us to make things work, we have to really think about how we can work together. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to thank all of our advisory task force members, and we will continue the work with subcommittees.